Hello and welcome to today's Modernizing and Securing Healthcare IT EcoCast event brought to you in partnership with NetApp, Rubrik, Gigamon, Nutanix, and Duo. We've got expert presenters lined up for you today, specifically on the topic of healthcare technology on today's EcoCast event. This event is produced by ActualTech Media, and I'm excited to be serving as your moderator. My name is David Davis. Thank you so much for joining us on the EcoCast. We've got a great event lined up for you today. Now, before we get started, just a little bit of information that you need to be aware of when it comes to today's EcoCast webinar. We've got a number of prizes lined up for you today on the event. I'll be talking about those as well as the eligibility requirements in just a moment. We want this to be an educational event, and as such, I encourage you to use the questions box in your audience console. We'll be doing dedicated Q&A sessions with each of today's presenters, so get your questions in early. We also want this to be a social event. You can tweet directly from the console, and the hashtag for this EcoCast will be automatically appended. And then finally, we have a number of handouts available for download there in the Handouts tab. These are hand-selected by today's presenters. I encourage you to download those PDF assets or click on the links to check out those resources during the event because they won't be readily available after today's presentation. Now, the prizes that we'll be awarding on today's presentation are 3 Amazon $500 gift cards. You must be live in attendance to qualify. Winners will be announced on the live event. If you're watching this on demand, I'm sorry, the drawing has already occurred. All winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to ActualTech Media. Full prize terms and conditions can be found in the Handouts tab. Until COVID-19 is beat, ActualTech Media is donating $500 to Direct Relief Charity. For every MegaCast, EcoCast, and Summit event that we run, Direct Relief provides critical medical supplies to frontline healthcare workers. So by supporting this event, you are indirectly supporting Direct Relief. So we appreciate your support, and we encourage you to support them as well. The hashtag on Twitter for today's EcoCast is ATM EcoCast. I'll be tweeting about the event. And like I said, you can tweet directly from your console as well. You can follow ActualTech Media and me, David M. Davis, on Twitter for the latest and greatest in enterprise technology. Also, make sure that you subscribe to the ActualTech Media social channels on YouTube, Facebook, and the 10 on Tech podcast over in the iTunes store. You can follow ActualTech Media on LinkedIn. That's where we post all of our latest content. So make sure that you follow ActualTech Media. You can use the icon on the top right-hand side of your console. Now, before I run a poll question and get your feedback on the top concerns in healthcare IT, I want to give you a little bit of foundation, a little bit of level setting here, and give you my take on what I feel and what I've learned are the top concerns in healthcare and IT. And I want to see if your concerns line up with my research. Of course, the core concern has got to always be physical security. We need to look at our data in the healthcare world like it has to be put in a bank vault. That data is so critical because it contains PII, or personally identifiable information. And as you in healthcare know, that data is like gold. As such, we need to make sure that we always apply the principle of least privilege and have defense in depth to ensure that any data is properly authenticated, authorized, and accounted for whenever that access occurs. So data security is always part of the healthcare IT mantra. Of course, network security has got to be a critical piece of this as well. Segmenting the network, those core principles, edge security, firewalls, microsegmentation, port-based and wireless security, and critically multi-factor or two-factor authentication to make sure that whoever's accessing that data is really who they say that they are. And then we have endpoint security, preventing malware, preventing ransomware. With so many healthcare organizations in the news, ransomware prevention and detection has got to be top of mind. And one of the best ways to do that is sort of this presumption of compromise or the zero trust security model. And lastly, with HIPAA compliance being critical in any healthcare IT organization, we have to keep in mind data protection, disaster recovery, vulnerability scanning, encryption of data, and of course, an overall umbrella, some sort of SIEM system to manage all that security information and those events that are coming in. With all this in mind, We've got a great event lined up for you today with experts presenting in the healthcare IT space. You'll hear from experts at NetApp, Rubrik, Gigamon, Nutanix, and Duo. Before I introduce you to our first presenter on the EcoCast, I've got a couple of quick poll questions I want to get your feedback on, and I'll share the results with you so you can see how you stack up with your peers. All right, our first poll is here on the screen, and that is, what are your most critical concerns in your healthcare IT organization? And I've listed out a number of concerns like I talked about there in the state of healthcare IT, but I want to hear from you out there in the industry. If your concern is not listed, there's an other option at the bottom. Just drop your concern in the questions box, and I'll share it out here with the hundreds of folks from the healthcare IT industry that are on today's live event. I see 5 people have indicated other already, so thank you for those. Just drop them in the chat box, and I'll share the results again with the audience. I see, I don't want to influence any of the results, but it looks like a tight race actually between all of the different options. Keep your votes coming in. If you haven't done this before, you just select the option or options that correspond to you in the slides window, and I will share the results of this poll here in just a moment. We're lining up our first presenter on the event today. So just a couple poll questions, and I'll be introducing you to that first presenter. I should point out, if anyone has any trouble viewing the poll question or viewing really any of the presentations today, 99% of the time, a refresh on your web browser will resolve that. And Chrome is the recommended web browser. Sometimes plugins interfere with some part or portion of the presentation. So if you have trouble, an incognito or private web browsing session in Chrome will handle or resolve just about any problem out there. All right, thank you everyone who responded to that poll question. I've just shared the results on the screen. 56% of you said data security. That was by far the most critical concern on the list today. Let's see, the next concern, it's a pretty close tie there between data protection and disaster recovery at 39, network security visibility at 38, and ransomware at 36. We also got feedback here from Abby out there in the audience. She said that with IoT being rampant, security is really their utmost concern, especially around IoT. I can totally imagine that in healthcare environments where just everything is network enabled, everything is wireless, everything is network enabled, so many different medical types of devices out there, and they're all connected to the network. So IoT security has got to be a big concern in the healthcare industry. All right, thank you everyone who responded to that poll question. The next poll question is here on the screen. That is, what's your time frame for adding new or updating existing IT solutions in your company or in your healthcare organization? And I'll give you a few moments to answer that question as well. All right, thank you everyone who responded to that poll. We do appreciate it. Looks like a lot of you are looking for new innovative solutions out there to solve your technology challenges in healthcare IT. And it's time to get started with today's Healthcare IT EcoCast event. And with that, I'm excited to introduce you to our first presenter. That is Mr. Martin Crew, Director for Industry Solutions at Gigamon. Martin, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hi, hello everybody.
Good morning, Martin. Thanks for being on. Take it away.
Hello everybody. So my name is Martin Crew from Gigamon, where I'm the Director of Solutions Marketing. And what we're going to discuss today is how Gigamon can help you modernize and secure your healthcare environment. So we have a very simple agenda for the day. I'm going to give you a 1-minute overview of Gigamon. Then I'm going to talk briefly about what we're seeing in the healthcare market right now and what we've been seeing over the last several months. Then we'll talk about 4 critical steps that we believe are important to enable healthcare IT organizations, or really any IT organizations, to become stronger as we emerge from the present crisis. talk briefly about how does Gigamon help you do that, and then we'll focus on one aspect of this that I think is important to everybody these days, which is how can we actually help you save money in that process. So let's start talking about Gigamon. So many of you may know Gigamon. We are one of the leaders in the network visibility market. For those of you who don't, just let me say a couple of quick things. So what we do is we provide full visibility to all the network traffic that gives you analytic capability, gives you the ability to secure everything across all of your network infrastructure, whether it's cloud-based, whether it's in physical data centers or in virtualized environments. We provide full visibility. What that lets you do is a number of things. First of all, it lets you reduce network tools costs. So we'll talk about this as we go through the presentation, and at the end I'll give you a link to let you test out whether it will actually save you money. By providing that visibility, we enable you to increase the resilience and scalability of your networks, which we know is very important, because one of the critical things that allows you to do is have a solid platform from which to increase to accelerate your digital transformation initiatives. So the things that in the poll you were talking about there, implementing innovative solutions, they can only really happen when you've got a solid foundation in your network. Okay, so a few quick stats about the organization. So we have about 4,000 customers worldwide. They're some of the largest and most demanding organizations. In the healthcare space, we have over 600 customers on a global basis. And a couple of key things on this slide I want to draw out. So one is we focus very much on customer satisfaction, and we have a 4.8 out of 5 rating for that. And our technology is based on a deep technology stack, so we actually have 75 global patents. Okay, so let's take a look at what we've been seeing in the healthcare market over the last little while. So what we've been seeing in the healthcare market is that in the immediate impact of COVID-19, all systems and, in fact, all people within those systems were under massive stress in the healthcare market. Obviously, the immediate priority was responding and getting ready for the COVID-19 patients, and at the same time ensuring the security of all of the other patient data. We also saw this huge increase in phishing attacks, ransomware attacks, all kinds of attacks as a result of work from home. So securing that was one of the major priorities that we were working with our customers on in the first phase of this. Second phase, and I'd say we're still really in the second phase, is stabilization and optimization of the applications that really have been necessary as we've been through this switch from face-to-face delivery of healthcare to remote delivery of much of healthcare. So obviously people had to stabilize their existing applications, but there were also a lot of new applications that had to be brought on board and scaled out very rapidly. So whether it was telehealth applications for non-COVID customers, or whether it was internally focused apps, many of which have now actually gone external, of course, like Zoom and WebEx, or collaboration apps like Teams, all of these things had to be stabilized, they had to be scaled out, and the processes for things like security around them had to be really well established. The final thing that we're really seeing now, and I think this will continue for the foreseeable future, and arguably it's always been there, is the need to do more with less. We're obviously in the healthcare world in a very uncertain budget situation. We have massively spiked costs. We have declining revenues from elective surgeries, from funding of all sorts. So organizations are really under huge pressure to do more with less. As we look forward, obviously organizations have got to think through a variety of different return to work scenarios. This is not a situation that's ending anytime soon, and it's not a situation that's ending with a, okay, March the 1st, we're all back in the office. This is going to be phased, and it's going to be a very difficult situation to plan and to manage. I think we're going to see a lot of acceleration of telehealth initiatives. We're going to see increased use of Internet of Medical Things and operational technologies of all kind. And also, we're going to see a big push towards increasing digitalization, so more and more digital initiatives. So finally, one of the big things we're working with our customers on right now is understanding and planning what are the IT implications of these things. So do we have enough resources? Do we have the right resources? What are the budget implications of these initiatives? So this is what we're going to talk about now. So as we look at the market, there are really 4 critical things that organizations need to do to become stronger as we go through this process of change and disruption. So let's talk about the first. So the first is to deliver new and improved levels of patient care. Obviously, patients are at the center of the healthcare world, and figuring out how they can be better served is very, very important. This is going to come down to technology. I mean, there's only a limited amount you can do with people. Healthcare professionals have always delivered great service. So it really is now about technology empowering those services and making them as widely available and as effective as possible. Plus, patients as consumers, their behavior is changing. They're no longer prepared to accept, okay, well, you can only talk to the doctor in this time slot, or you have to come into the office to have that discussion. These days, people want 24/7 access. So how do you provide that remote access from any device, anytime? Secondly, how can you use Internet of Medical Things devices to improve patient care? So what can you do in terms of testing, in terms of remote monitoring, in terms of all the things that go with that, so that when patients are not in the hospital, you can still provide a very high level of service? I think organizations are increasingly looking at things like operational technologies, so security systems, all those things for the hospital to ensure patient care. So I think we're going to see a big uptick in using those operational technologies as part of delivering healthcare. And then the final thing is easing the integration with third-party systems. We all know how frustrating it is to have to wait a long time for results. So really closer integration with all the third-party organizations supporting patient care, I think is going to be critical in delivering that overall high quality of experience. Okay, with that, you have to ensure both patient and organizational security. There's no point having great service if the patient data is breached, leaked, or compromised in any form. So how do you actually do that? So there are a lot of things that we believe can be done, but work from home, the use of medical devices, the use of telehealth obviously means that the attack surface is increased, and that's going to expose a lot more vulnerabilities and more threats. So all healthcare IT organizations have got to scale up to do this. One of the critical things that I think many organizations are doing now is they're doing a fundamental review of their security model, and they're going from this view of, okay, if someone's got access to the network, they are inherently secured, they're a known entity, to a model where with organizations are saying trust nothing. Just because someone's on the network doesn't mean they're trustworthy. Every device, every user is a potential threat. So organizations are looking at different security models, things like zero trust, as a way to implement that level of security. Also, organizations are looking at how they use artificial intelligence and machine learning in combination with people. Security is no longer a people problem, and it isn't yet a machine-only problem. It's in the interaction of the two. So using AI and machine learning to actually tackle the problem at scale, but still maintaining human intuition and a human's intuitive ability to look at data to see patterns and detect threats. So that's a very important aspect of this. Okay, next thing, supporting the dynamic workplace. So one of the critical things, as I mentioned earlier on, is we do not know how this crisis ends. We do not know the timing. We do not know the shape of the organization at the end of all of this. So we have to have IT prepare for a situation where we're going to be in a very dynamic workplace environment for the foreseeable future. So whether people are permanently out of the office and working from home, whether they're in the office part of the time on, an A-team, B-team basis or whatever. We have to make sure that IT is delivering a seamless experience so that whether they're at home, whether they're in an office environment, whether they're in a coffee shop environment, if they are on the network, they are secure and they're fully supported. They've got access to all the applications that they need. So this is going to be a critical thing. And again, one of the critical things we deliver is the visibility to ensure that that can actually happen. And then the final thing that we see as an imperative for all IT organizations is this idea of doing more with less. So particularly in healthcare, where we've seen, the sort of perfect storm of the virus, the spike in costs that it drove, the decline in revenues for various reasons. Organizations have got to figure out how they get the most out of their network and the tools they use to manage that network, the teams, the applications, everything. So this is an area where we've been very focused, and at the end of this presentation, I'll talk briefly about how we do that. But in general terms, let's just talk about what we do. So what are all these 4 initiatives built on? So our contention is that solving the problems that all of these 4 initiatives give rise to is a very simple thing, and that's visibility. You've got to have visibility to the information on the network so that you can achieve security, so that you can understand where cost savings are possible, so that you can understand what's happening with the dynamic workplace, so that you can see application performance. It really doesn't matter what attribute you're looking for or what aspect of the network you're trying to manage. Without visibility, it's just not going to happen. So we provide that full visibility. So we do it in a number of ways. This is one of our screens. This is one of our screens that uses our application intelligence functionality. And what this screen is showing is, first of all, look at the donut chart. So this shows you the top applications on the network. So you can see very, very quickly what applications on the network are generating most traffic. You can then see in the chart next to it the total traffic on the network, the peaks, the spikes. You can click on any of those, do timescale-based work to see what's actually happening on the network now and over time. And then finally, in the right-hand column, we're looking at all the applications on the network, and we can identify here which are the top applications in terms of bandwidth, and that can be measured in a number of different ways. And we can decide if we need to take specific action to, for example, prioritize certain of those applications over others, or if we need to direct traffic from one of those applications to a specific tool set for deeper inspection in response to threats. So we provide not just visibility, we provide a very, very simple way to actually see what's going on the network. So how do we do that? So what Gigamon provides is what we call the Gigamon Visibility and Analytics Fabric. So what this does is this sits between your network and all the tools that you use to manage and secure that network. So it essentially is providing an abstraction layer so that rather than managing all of the devices at a physical level, all your devices, all your data feeds, whether they're coming in from the internet, whether they're coming in from data centers, they go into the Gigamon fabric. And from within the fabric, we can route that traffic to whatever tools need to see it. So whether it's security tools, whether it's performance monitoring tools, whether it's your SIM tool, whatever tools you're using that are critical to the way you manage the network, we handle routing the traffic to those tools. And we can also apply a lot of capability to that. So for example, we can deduplicate all the traffic on the network. So most networks have upwards of 50% duplicate network packets. So we can intercept those, we can filter them out and reduce the workload on the tools. Similarly, we can apply filtering in a number of different ways. So we can direct traffic from particular ports to specific tools. We can filter out on a number of other criteria. So there's any number of different ways we can reduce the traffic that goes to those tools. So what that means is those tools don't get overloaded. So they can do their job, they can do it much more predictably, And typically what we see with most of our customers is that by using Gigamon, they are actually able to reduce traffic to their various tools by around 50%. What that means at a practical level is that they don't need as many tools as their network volumes grow. So from wherever you are now, I'm sure you've got a tools budget that's based on future growth assumptions. But what if you could break the math in that? What if you could say, all right, well, if we invest some of that money in Gigamon and that optimizes everything on the network, we could actually have to buy fewer of those tools in the future. So that's one of the critical things that we bring to the table. Okay, so how do we do that? So we have an online value calculator, and it's a very, very simple system that lets you go in and lets you basically model what's happening on the network, what tools you've got on the network, what growth you're assuming you're going to have over the next 3, 5 years, whatever time scale you want to look at. And it comes out with predictions on what you could scale or what you could save using Gigamon. Very consistently, we are seeing customers using Gigamon are saving in the first year between $500,000 and $1 million on Gigamon. Over 3 to 5 years, they're saving upwards of $3 million. And they're typically getting a payback in an average of 5 months. So for those of you really looking to do more with less on the network, looking at Gigamon is a really great way to do that and to optimize the return on investment in your existing tools. So if you're interested to learn more, one of the ways to do that is to go onto our Gigamon website, and there you'll see the value calculator. You can also go to it directly at value-calculator.gigamon.com, and you can also talk to us. So, as well as the calculator, we've got a team of return on investment experts who can help you. They can look at what we've done for other customers, including customers in the healthcare space, and they can really give you good insights into where you can make those savings and optimize the network. Okay, so with that, my formal presentation is done, and I'll be happy to take any questions that have been sent in.
Absolutely, yeah. Great presentation, Martin. We do have some questions for you from the audience. While we do that, I'm just going to bring up this poll for everyone out there that says, what additional information would you like about the Gigamon solution? And I'll just leave that up while we do our Q&A. So let's see here. First question that came in, I see, is from Neil, and he's asking, does Gigamon help to prevent and or recover in some way from ransomware?
No, I'm going to be honest and say ransomware is not one of the things that we do. We do have a security network detection and response module called Threat Insight, and that can provide you some information on patterns of behavior that may suggest there's a ransomware attack developing. But the straight answer to the question, Neil, is no, we cannot help protect or help you recover from a ransomware attack.
Okay, that's good candidate information there. Next question, they're asking, what about Gigamon's healthcare customers? Can you provide any sort of references or case studies?
Sure. So we have, as I said, over 600 customers in the healthcare market, about 15% of our total customer base. If you go to the website, you'll find case studies on a number of those customers. One that I would highlight right now that's been very much in the news recently is Johns Hopkins. I mean, obviously, they've been doing phenomenal work in giving everyone good information on the COVID situation. So they're one of our customers. We also have many major health systems across the U.S., like Cardinal Health, that use us. We have many of the network providers, like Blue Cross Blue Shield. They use us in 19 states. Internationally, we are used by organizations like Bupa. In Asia Pacific, we're used by, for example, the Beijing Children's Hospital, and also many of the pharmaceutical companies. Again, many in the news because of the vaccine. So Merck, AstraZeneca, Roche, and J&J are all Gigamon customers.
Excellent. Very nice. Yeah, that's an incredible list of names there. Next question they're asking if you support IoT or IoMT devices, a new term I learned actually on researching for today's event, these Internet of Medical devices, Internet of Medical Things. Can Gigamon help to monitor or protect those devices?
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, we see this as an absolutely critical part of the network these days. It really doesn't matter the scale of organization that you're at. Almost everybody in healthcare, well, I won't say almost, I'm sure everybody in healthcare is using these smart devices to some degree. So many of these don't have conventional security models. You know, many of them you can't drop an agent on, for example. So monitoring the traffic that comes from them is absolutely critical to ensuring the security of the organization. I mean, we've all heard the horror stories of attacks on facilities through things like smart thermometers and monitoring systems of all kinds. So securing those devices and getting visibility to that traffic is a critical part of what we do.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, I'm sure that could help a lot of healthcare organizations out there. Next question, what about the cloud? I mean, everybody talks about the cloud. Does Gigamon monitor devices that run in the cloud or applications? And if so, what cloud vendors do you support?
Okay, so yeah, absolutely. So because our customers tend to be large, complex organizations, almost all of them are using the cloud for some part of their architecture. We work with all of the major vendors. So we work with Amazon, we work with Microsoft, we're working with Google Cloud, and we're actually looking to work with Oracle and the Oracle Cloud in the very near future. So we can provide virtual probes, taps, if you will, that can sit on the cloud networks and give us exactly the same level of access to cloud traffic as we have through onto physical networks or virtualized networks. And obviously the very clear trend that we're seeing is to complete interoperability, or a desire for complete interoperability among those cloud platforms. Right now, cloud architectures are a bit like, you know, enterprise on-premise architectures were 15 years ago. There's a lot of proprietary thinking, a lot of proprietary development, but obviously that's going to break down over time. It has to. So enabling that interoperability across the hybrid cloud is fundamental to Gigamon's vision of what we need to deliver to our customers.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, I think we're running out of time in our live Q&A session. I just want to go back to this slide with your contact information on there.
Sure.
If anybody wants to click on that, it's a hyperlink. And for more information, you can go to the value calculator at Gigamon. Is that right, Martin? What does the value calculator do again for us?
Okay, so this helps companies calculate the possible savings that they would get as a result of using Gigamon by optimizing the ROI on their existing tools.
Excellent. I like that. Any tool that can help to provide savings has got to be a potential big win for healthcare organizations. Martin, thank you so much for being on the event today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Bye, everybody.
And thank you to Gigamon for supporting today's event. Again, for more information, visit the value calculator right there. Also in your handouts tab, don't forget, we have a handout there from Gigamon entitled Security, Resilience, and Agility in Times of Change. New tomorrow for healthcare. It's a special healthcare and IT solution brief that you'll want to check out after this event. So go ahead and download that now. And with that, it is time to introduce you to our next presenter on today's EcoCast. I'm excited to welcome Mr. Brian Wallace, Channel Director at Rubrik. Brian, are you there?
I am. David, can you hear me?
I can, yeah. Thanks for being on, Brian. Take it away.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Martin, great job. Great presentation. Gigamon's clearly doing some great stuff in healthcare, and I really enjoyed that. Good morning, everyone. My name is Brian Wallace, as David mentioned. I'm a Channel Sales Director at Rubrik. I'm really excited to speak with you this morning about what we do and how we're helping our healthcare customers. Before we get into that, real quick, I know we have some folks on the line from the West Coast and the Gulf Coast. To those people, anyone with loved ones in those areas, obviously our thoughts are with you. The fires and the storms in those areas are just horrendous. So we're thinking about you. Stay safe. And again, our thoughts are with you guys. All right, so let's talk about Rubrik and our mission. We've been shipping product for about 4 years, and in that time, we've seen incredible market traction, close to 3,000 customers across essentially every vertical and market segment. The reason behind this traction is that data protection fundamentally hasn't really changed much in the last 30 years. So you have large levels of complexity across components, from backup software to server infrastructure to proxies that scale to meet your environment's requirements, to replication components, backup and search catalogs, and a lot of folks that we meet with are still leveraging tape and offsite storage. Legacy solutions are multi-tiered, and they're complex, and they're comprised of a lot of different disparate hardware and software components that often require a ton of professional services to implement and maintain. To be fair, in the mid-2000s, Data Domain came along. For those of you that know the market, Data Domain is a familiar name. They came along and introduced deduplication and the ability to back up to disk. But that didn't fundamentally change the framework of the stack, and many would argue it actually added some complexity to it. So at Rubrik, we really set out to change all this. We collapsed this incredibly complex architecture through a single pane of software and the software fabric that scales out infinitely to provide data protection on premises and in the cloud. This fabric spans private and public clouds, and our hyper-converged approach to our on-prem appliance allows us to start really small and scale infinitely on demand, which means no forklift upgrades are required, and that's a really good thing. Our fundamental goal here at Rubrik is to help you achieve data control in a hybrid and multi-cloud environment. Our unique approach to data protection means that we can deliver a single source of truth across your entire distributed environment. Using the richness of metadata, we provide a holistic approach to maximize the value you can get from all of your data for governance, assurance, security, and ultimately cloud mobility. Now let's pivot for a second and talk about some of the trends that we're seeing in healthcare. The first one is consumerism. So what do we mean by consumerism? Generally speaking, we're talking about empowering patients to manage their own health. Patients proactively using trustworthy and relevant information to make better informed decisions about their healthcare options. And patients ultimately becoming more proactive and preventative in terms of monitoring and managing their healthcare, as opposed to reactive, and both providers and patients leveraging technology to enable that journey. The next one's telehealth, which can almost be thought of as a component of this idea of consumerism. But really what we're talking about here, obviously, is enabling patients to access healthcare services remotely and manage their healthcare. I mean, at this point, telehealth benefits are really undeniable. It makes healthcare accessible to people who live in rural or isolated communities, provides more efficient access to medical specialists, and ultimately improves care communication and coordination across kind of the spectrum of care for a patient. Ultimately, the goal of telehealth is to provide patients with tools for self-management of their own health care. The next one we're seeing is cybersecurity. So obviously keeping patient data safe against ever-evolving cyber attacks. Ransomware attacks on healthcare providers are up almost 100% since March versus this time last year. They're getting more sophisticated by the day. We see this continuing to be a major issue in healthcare going forward. Remote work. So the current climate obviously is leading to more and more workers moving remote, and this is true in healthcare as well, obviously. So infrastructure and IT service delivery really needs to continue to transform to meet this new reality while continuing to protect sensitive data and ultimately patient safety. The next one's healthcare analytics. So AI and machine learning are being leveraged to better diagnose and treat patients. Remote patient monitoring and IoT are leading to a mountain of data that healthcare organizations are left trying to manage and mine in an effort to provide value-added services and ultimately improve patient care. Public cloud, right? So more and more healthcare organizations are moving to the public cloud to realize all the benefits that are there, right, associated with cost savings and operational efficiency. These are always top of mind for healthcare organizations, and there are plenty of big partnerships out there that have been promoted. Obviously, Mayo and Google and Cerner and AWS, Providence St. Joe signed a massive partnership agreement with Microsoft. So, while healthcare tends to sort of lag in terms of adopting something like public cloud, the writing's clearly on the wall there, and they're starting to embrace it. Obviously, these trends have accelerated in this new world that we're living in with COVID as well. All right, so we've talked about some trends that we're seeing in healthcare. Now let's take a minute to talk about common customer challenges that we're seeing in the field. The first one's operational complexity. So with respect to backup and recovery, as we touched on earlier, legacy multi-point solutions are really difficult to manage and scale, often require the orchestration of multiple jobs and manual intervention, which often leads to a tremendous amount of time spent just to keep it operational. Lean IT resources. So healthcare IT teams are often very lean, and it's really not uncommon for us to go into a large organization and find that backup and recovery is being managed by one person. There's a lot of risk with that. Efficiency and the ability to do more with less is a constant reality that healthcare providers have to solve for, and technology needs to enable that. Ransomware. So given the sensitivity of the data that healthcare organizations manage, obviously they're a prime target for ransomware attacks. But as ransomware attacks become more sophisticated, protecting data with legacy solutions is becoming harder, and in some cases, just plain impossible. So ensuring sensitive data is protected is always job one in healthcare IT, obviously. Cost management. So the pressure to continually deliver high-quality patient care at an affordable price continually forces IT to explore better ways to manage their costs. The ability to accurately forecast and predict future costs, and the ability to leverage innovative technologies, such as the public cloud, to reduce spend is a must, as is automation wherever possible. Data volume. So healthcare organizations have always had a tremendous amount of data under management. However, as the industry continues to transform, the introduction of remote patient monitoring, remote workers, healthcare analytics, and a ton of different consumer applications have led to an explosion of data, making efficiency and speed and the ability to scale on demand that much more important. And then finally, compliance. So healthcare is obviously one of the most regulated industries in the world. Providers are faced with the constant challenge of addressing federal regulations that set privacy and usage standards for patient data. At a tactical level, compliance poses a big challenge for healthcare because it not only requires them to manage replication and archival across multiple sites, but also requires them to retain data for much longer, years, much longer than other types of organizations, and frequently test recoverability, which can be time-consuming and costly. And so can the fines for noncompliance. The government obviously conducts periodic provider audits, and if you don't meet these compliance regulations, you can face fines well into the seven figures. So let's touch on how we're helping healthcare organizations meet these challenges head on. The first one, quite simply, is cost savings. Rubrik effectively eliminates legacy multi-point backup and recovery solutions with a single software-defined platform. We can send data to the cloud or cheap on-prem object storage for long-term retention. We're typically seeing anywhere from 30 to 50% cost savings with healthcare customers that we're working with. We simplify management. So Rubrik automates data protection, replication, and archival workflows and greatly reduces management time. We help drive efficiency by allowing you to craft your backup, replication, and archival policies in one SLA domain, and it's incredibly simple. This SLA policy can easily be applied to new applications that come online later and on demand. Let's talk about backup and recovery performance. So Rubrik shortens backup windows with an incremental forever approach that reduces RTO to near zero. We use parallel ingest to accelerate snapshot ingest and eliminate VM stun. We provide instant recovery live mount for VMs, and SQL and Oracle databases. Google-like search is built into the platform and everywhere, which means you can recover single files instantly. And we deliver tight RPOs for your most important VMs with one click to turn on continuous data protection in the SLA domain. And then finally, reducing risk and defending against ransomware. All Rubrik data is encrypted in flight using TLS protocol and at rest everywhere, from source or connector to cluster, node to node, within a node, from cluster to other storage tiers, whether they're on-prem or in the cloud. All data at rest is also secured with the latest best-of-breed encryption technologies. And with Rubrik, All your applications and data are stored in an immutable format, in an immutable file system, preventing ransomware from accessing and encrypting your backups. Ransomware is starting to target backups. They should be protected, and we do that natively. So you can deliver one-click recoveries with AI-driven insight into how your data changed during an attack as well. This is a big differentiator for us and critical in healthcare to nullify ransomware attacks. So with Rubrik, you get simplified data protection for all of your enterprise and EHR data. So we support industry-leading applications, operating systems, databases, multiple different hypervisors, clouds, and SaaS applications. Rubrik Edge extends data protection and management to virtual and physical environments in remote and branch offices. You can deploy Rubrik Edge at remote locations to back up locally, replicate to a central data center, and archive to the cloud or another data center with one management interface and a very elegant one-click pane of glass. And finally, you can protect your Epic EHR environment from Cache to Clarity, as well as other leading EHRs with Rubrik. Providers can seamlessly capture, protect, and back up their EHR data across hospitals and clinics with a single management platform from Rubrik. We'll get into some actual references here in just a bit as well. So Rubrik makes it very easy to manage archival of your clinical and business data with a single SLA policy engine, whether it needs to be stored on-prem or in the cloud. You can instantly locate your data with global search. You can reduce the cost of long-term data retention by archiving to the cloud, and you can be prepared for disaster recovery with failover to a secondary data center or to the cloud. So let's talk about each of these options. So let's talk about cloud first. So from day one, Rubrik's vision was to become the world's leading cloud data management company, and we've been relentless in building solutions that help customers in their journey to the public cloud while maintaining creature comforts of on-prem. First, we unlock the cloud for long-term data retention with what we call Cloud Out. So Amazon S3, Google Cloud Storage, and Azure Blob Storage for quick access and retrieval and very cost-effective storage. Once that data was in the cloud, we enable customers to instantiate on-prem workloads in the cloud for app restores and test dev with what we call Cloud On. So in effect, what we're doing here is mobilizing your applications across the data center and across the public cloud. This is critical in implementing a DR to cloud or migration to cloud strategy. Next, we took it one step further, enabling customers to protect workloads running in AWS or Azure by deploying a Rubrik software instance through what we call Cloud Edition. So building on our current on-prem capabilities and leveraging our SaaS offering, which we call Polaris, we're now delivering cloud-native protection by integrating directly with native snapshot capabilities and APIs provided by AWS and Azure. So for your EC2 instances or Azure VMs, you can use Polaris or provide cloud-native protection. Polaris triggers API calls to create snapshots and indexes the metadata. Automate SLA policies that will map to specific tags. As your cloud environments scale, so more AWS accounts, more Azure subscriptions, maybe both, data silos inevitably occur. What Polaris does is collapses this by unifying data protection and controlling all of this data through one console. So let's talk about on-prem a little bit. We're going to highlight a couple of our storage alliance partners here, Pure and NetApp. This is not an exhaustive list, just two storage providers that we have really tight technical integrations with. So how do we handle this with Pure? So Rubrik and Pure deliver granular RPOs for production workloads and eliminate the effects of VMware app stun. So for highly transactional applications in virtualized environments, Rubrik and FlashArray ensure high performance without lengthy snapshot windows and application timeouts. The performance is outstanding. The integration significantly reduces the VM snapshot stun window while providing consistent point-in-time copy of VMs for reliable and quick recovery. Unlike traditional backup vendor integrations with block storage arrays, Rubrik's direct integration with FlashArray provides granular protection and file-level recovery for virtualized environments. Now let's talk about NetApp for a minute. So both NetApp and Rubrik have partnered up together to deliver tightly integrated products. This is all powered by Rubrik's first-to-market and exclusive access to NetApp SnapDiff APIs for on-prem and cloud. By using Rubrik to protect and manage their NetApp data, customers drive significant operational savings via policy-driven data management and business agility with advanced cloud usage, so orchestrating data to the cloud for archival and DR, et cetera. Let's talk about ransomware. So we touched on this a little bit, but as healthcare organizations look to improve patient experience through digital transformation, their data is only becoming more lucrative and easier to access for cyber attacks. So even with defense mechanisms in place, ransomware attacks continue to rise and continue to be successful. Healthcare is one of the top industries targeted by ransomware, obviously. Attacks were up a whopping 350% in Q4 last calendar year compared with Q3, and over 100% since March versus last year. So if paying ransom is an unreliable recovery option, why do organizations continue to pay? It's because recovery is extremely painful and very time-consuming and also very expensive. The ransom is only part of the expense. And that's if you even have backups to recover from. Furthermore, businesses lack visibility into the scope of damage typically. So it forces them to perform these mass restores of their entire environment instead of just recovering impacted data from a point in time, which ultimately leads to higher data loss. So our approach really addresses all three of those challenges. First, we provide instant recovery. So imagine being able to recover from the last known good backup instantly. This is a core capability that has made Rubrik the leader in next-gen backup and recovery. Second, we have a natively immutable file system. No bolt-ons, no third-party add-ons. Our platform is natively immutable. Massive competitive differentiation for us, which means our backups can never be encrypted or deleted, even from internal users or admins. Finally, beyond fast recovery from bulletproof backups, we automatically diagnose which application files changed so you can quickly understand the scope of what's been affected. We're constantly analyzing the metadata to deliver this information. So this minimizes the risk of data loss from a mass restore. All right. So at this point, I'd like to share a couple of customer stories with you of note that might be relevant. So we've got some logos up here, but the first one I'll highlight, is Seattle Genetics. So prior to Rubrik, Seattle Genetics was not confident in their legacy tape-based solution, which is powered by NetBackup. Microsoft Exchange is absolutely vital to their company, and users expect zero downtime. With their previous solution, full backups took days to complete. It was extremely complicated and required specialized knowledge that only one employee on their IT staff knew fully, which there's a ton of risk in that. As their legacy system grew, it required more servers to protect the company's data. They tried creating more policies and couldn't run them concurrently or adequately protect the systems on their backup windows. Since the scientists working at Seattle Genetics handle large amounts of data, accidental deletions are a common occurrence, and it was hard for the team to do restores in a timely manner under these conditions. Seattle Genetics needed a solution that was simple to implement and scale and was easy enough for anybody to use. They evaluated Veeam, but had issues managing larger VMs and databases that couldn't be resolved in the POC process. We shine through with ingest speed that the customer never thought was possible with their applications and the type of data they have on hand. Plus our ease of use in cloud archive capabilities really helped us there. We've got a great partnership with Seattle Genetics and really appreciate their partnership. The next one I'll highlight is Chapters Health. So as part of their digital transformation initiative, Chapters was keen to address the growing threat of ransomware with a new data management solution. It was also important that the solution supported multiple hypervisors. With their previous solution, this would have required Chapters to make a significant hardware and software investment with their legacy vendor and pay additional licensing fees for backing up different hypervisors. Key differentiators for Rubrik were the ability to protect against ransomware, which I mentioned, with immutable snapshots, as well as being hypervisor agnostic. Chapters is a Nutanix shop. They were able to implement Nutanix Acropolis Hypervisor alongside VMware vSphere without incurring additional cost, management planes, or anything like that. And obviously, you're going to hear more about Nutanix coming up here in a minute. The last one I want to call out is the California Department of State Hospitals. So the DSH manages the state's mental health hospital system, provides inpatient services to about 10,000 patients. They've got 5 hospitals located across the state. Previously, this is an interesting one, they archived between hospitals, meaning that each facility had an archival partner. This was turned off prior to the wildfires, leaving them with no valid recovery method in the case of a disaster. With our seamless cloud integration, they're now archiving all hospital data in AWS S3 for long-term retention and are now prepared to recover critical data in the event of a disaster. All right, so additional resources, and David, correct me if I'm wrong, these are clickable, but we can get these out to you afterwards, and you can always contact anybody on the Rubrik team for this stuff. But we've got some really neat data sheets, a couple of great ebooks, and then, you know, what I find the most interesting always is voice of the customer. So we did a couple of webinars with Kern Medical, and then another one with Legacy Health, where, you know, our customer does a great job of talking about why they invested in Rubrik and what it's done for their business and for their data. So I encourage everybody to check these out, and again, feel free to contact Rubrik at any time to engage, or if you want additional information. And with that, I'll turn it back over to David for any questions from the group.
Absolutely. Yeah, great presentation, Brian. Really appreciate that. While we do some Q&A, I'm just going to bring up the poll question that we ask after each one of these presentations, and that is, what additional information would you like about the Rubrik solution? I want to call everyone's attention to that question there in the slides window. So let's see, we got some feedback from Vinny. He said he loves Rubrik and always excited to learn more about the Rubrik solution. Great to hear that. Harold said, great presentation. Alex said, great content. So let's see, first question that I see here I wanted to ask you is, what about different workloads, healthcare workloads, can be protected with Rubrik? For example, do you support Epic?
We do. So, you know, at our core, we're designed to be vendor agnostic. So I mentioned we support any hypervisor, virtual and physical workloads. We've got a bunch of great customers protecting their Epic environment, cache, clarity, production, test dev, databases. We work with Epic customers. At the risk of sounding like, hey, we do everything for everybody, that's not the case. But, you know, within healthcare, I think we have yet to meet an application that we haven't been able to work with. So we support, you know, all industry-leading applications, EHRs, operating systems, databases, SQL, Oracle, et cetera, NAS, hypervisors, clouds, and we also support Epic through our Elastic application service. So hopefully that answers the question, but we absolutely do work with Epic, and we have some great reference customers in case anybody would like to speak with them.
Excellent. Yeah, a lot of flexibility there. Very nice. Next question, how's the architecture work with Rubrik? They're asking, what if I don't want to use Rubrik hardware? Can I leverage hardware that I already have?
Absolutely. So Rubrik Cloud Data Management, which is essentially the software suite, is available on qualified industry-leading hardware platforms. So Cisco UCS, HPE ProLiant, and Dell PowerEdge servers. So this allows customers to deliver data protection and all the great stuff we talked about, search, analytics, compliance, copy data management, on qualified industry-leading hardware platforms of their choice. Now, we do have a hardware firmware compatibility listing. We can't take our software and just throw it on any configuration of those OEM servers, but they're pretty popular configurations. And again, you are able to deploy Rubrik on all 3 leading OEM server platforms.
Very nice. Let's see. Next question, what about Rubrik licensing? Is there kind of a standard Rubrik license, and are there different packages, or how does that work?
Yeah, there is. I mean, most of the capabilities that I spoke about are inherent to the Rubrik Cloud Data Management license, which, you know, essentially includes most of what you need. So things like instant recovery, global file search, obviously, you know, everything in our platform is immutable. That comes our SLA engine and replication. all part of that core license. I mentioned Polaris, our SaaS-based tool that includes Radar, which is our ransomware and anomaly detection and remediation tool, and Sonar, which is more about data compliance and governance and discovery of sensitive data. Those are add-ons. Polaris is an add-on, but most of the capabilities that we've talked about are included in our core cloud data management license.
Excellent. Excellent. Next question. What about public cloud? What public clouds do you support? If people want to replicate or run Rubrik in the cloud, is that even possible?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So right now we support Azure and AWS. We are working with Google Cloud, but that's not quite 100% baked yet. But you know, we work seamlessly and integrate seamlessly with Azure and AWS.
Very nice. And then I talked earlier at the start of the event about, you know, HIPAA compliance and all the compliance requirements that healthcare organizations face. Can Rubrik help in that way?
Absolutely. So through our single SLA policy engine, we enable simplified replication and archival across Rubrik sites, and also the cloud to help support customers and their compliance requirements. So we also offer a number of capabilities, including centralized compliance reporting that's baked into the platform, as well as, you know, the tools I mentioned previously, Radar for ransomware, and then Sonar for data compliance and governance. That, you know, with Sonar, for example, there's a bunch of predefined policies that you can apply. You can create your own. So for, you know, HIPAA data, credit card data, et cetera, and the system can discover this and essentially treat that data differently and protect it differently in different schemes based on what that policy is. And again, there are a bunch of preset policies, but users can go in and custom create their own as well. So what we've really done with respect to you know, regulatory compliance is, you know, the platform has essentially automated that, and it's extremely slick. I'm probably not doing it justice just answering your question, but I would encourage anybody that sounds interesting. Think of it like, you know, similar product to like a Varonis, but it's actually baked into our platform, and all the magic happens in your backup environment, not in your production environment and network. So again, I'm probably not doing it great justice just answering your question, David, but I would highly encourage anybody that sounds kind of cool or kind of like it might be useful to engage Rubrik. We have a whole team of specialists just working on that and helping our customers understand the capabilities of that part of our platform and put them to use. So we'd welcome that conversation with anyone that's out there.
Absolutely, yeah. I bet that, you know, kind of automated data compliance would just be a dream come true for a lot of folks in healthcare IT organizations. So a great reason right there to get a personal demo. Next question comes from Adam, and I like this one because I've been in this situation before. I'm sure a lot of the folks on the event today have been as well. Adam's asking, how do you recommend organizations move forward who are currently low-tech in their DR strategies, who don't have upper management buy-in for better solutions, at least, of course, until something bad happens? Any tips out there for Adam and other folks like Adam who are in that situation?
Yeah, you know, it's a great question. There's probably a lot of different answers to that, but you know, I just had this conversation the other day with a small business here in Chicago. You know, the tip of the spear for many organizations is security and protecting against ransomware attacks, particularly if you're state and local government, healthcare. You know, those are a couple of the top, you know, verticals that are getting hit by this stuff. So, you know, what we've found is that in a lot of cases, organizations tend to sort of step over next-gen backup projects, right? Yeah, our backups may be archaic. There may be some holes there, but they're kind of working for now. We don't really need to touch that. It's too big. But if we approach it from more of the security side, that tends to resonate with more folks in the organization. and tends to resonate with the business more. And what we've seen, especially from, you know, what I would call like our mid-market and below customer set, is that's the approach that they're starting to take, and budget dollars are more readily available when you're looking through that lens and approaching the project from a security standpoint, as opposed to, you know, just straight backup modernization or backup improvement. So I hope that kind of answered the question. Again, there's probably a few different ways I could have gone with that response, but what we're seeing is at the lower ends there is approaching it from that security standpoint is allowing us to move forward with projects, because the ransomware threat is real and it's constant, and it's costing organizations a ton of money and reputation.
Excellent advice. Very, very good. I think that's a great place to stop our live Q&A. We've run out of time, but Brian, really excellent presentation. For more information, I'll bring up this slide out here for everyone. Those are clickable links on there, and of course, don't forget about the handout there in the Handouts tab on how to take the pain out of backup and recovery. Brian, thank you for being on the event today.
Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. It was fun.
And thank you to Rubrik for supporting today's presentation. Again, don't forget about the resources there on the screen. I'll just leave those up while I announce our first Amazon $500 gift card winner. That's going to Terry Marr from Kansas. Congratulations, Terry Marr from Kansas. 2 more gift cards still to give away, so make sure you stay tuned for those. And now it's time to move on to our next presentation on today's EcoCast on modernizing and securing healthcare IT. I'm excited to introduce our next presenter. That is Mr. Spencer Sells, Senior Director for Cloud Data Services at NetApp. Spencer, take it away.
Hey, David. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. And thank you for listening in and participating in this event. I'm confident if you continue on for the next 25 minutes, you're going to get a lot of good information that's going to help you do your job. And I know that being in IT and healthcare or medical devices and medical distribution has never been easy. You're usually thought of as a cost center. You have to deal with very demanding users, doctors and executives. Well, that's hard enough, and then along comes 2020. And I don't think I'm being melodramatic when I say that the world's counting on you now. We're looking for answers to medical issues so that we can get our economies going again, we can get our schools going again, we can get our communities going again. And that's a lot of pressure on you. So as David mentioned, my name is Spencer Sells. It's been my pleasure to be with NetApp for close to 15 years now, helping customers solve their data management issues. And so what we're going to talk about is how we can help you meet the challenges of healthcare today and tomorrow with our NetApp Cloud solutions. Now, your challenges started before this global pandemic in 2020. In fact, I'll go back to what was the buzzword in 2018 and 2019, digital transformation. And even though it was a buzzword, it was absolutely true. We're seeing across different industries, including healthcare, challenges coming in from new competitors who are looking at how they can deliver new services to engage customers more effectively, as well as to optimize cost. And that puts pressure on you. You know, that includes people like me. I can go to my bank 24/7 on my mobile application, do what I need to do without having to interact with anyone at my timeline. And frankly, it's become a pleasurable experience in that I can get what I've done in a simple, intuitive graphic user interface. I want that from my healthcare providers as well. I want to be able to communicate with the people who are helping me take care of my health and my family's health. I want to solve billing issues and all these other sorts of things, and not in a clunky 1990s style interface. And for those of you on the devices and the distribution side, you're probably getting pressure to find new business opportunities. How do you use that data to get into new lines of business, optimize operations and those sorts of things? And for all of you, I'm positive your budgets are not going up. And the mantra is to continue to control cost and to reduce cost. So we have 2020, but even before then, we have this mantra and this need for digital transformation. Well, that's where we come in as the cloud data specialists, because we're convinced data is the lifeblood of healthcare. Data is what allows you to provide faster diagnoses. It allows you to provide precision care. It allows you to optimize your business, to reduce risk and to stratify that risk, and to prevent other issues and outages. Now, you have a challenging environment, and that includes the standard tight budgets, but you also have on top of that regulatory and legal frameworks that can seem like an increasing patchwork that are state or country dependent and change pretty frequently. And then as we look into cloud and cloud services, many of the customers with whom we work are finding some skill gaps and lack of resources. You may be great at keeping Epic working on premises or an SAP R3 running on premises. And now you're looking at, how do I do electronic health records in the cloud? How do I do patient records and patient interaction systems in the cloud? How do I find people who understand containers and Kubernetes and object storage? And that can be a real challenge to find that talent or to train the talent that you have as well. That's where NetApp comes in. As the cloud data specialist, we believe in and, not or. And what we are able to do is help organizations such as yourself harness the power of Google Public Cloud to reduce cost and complexity, and at the same time, increase your agility and security, not compromise. So let's dig into the details of how we do that. And let's start with a couple of examples of organizations you may know and some you may not know, and how we have helped them with our cloud data services. Cardinal Health is a large North American organization. They provide services and products to healthcare organizations that could be hospitals, ambulatory care, surgery centers, clinical labs, and this is devices and distribution and other services. Now, they came to us with a business problem of how do they reduce operating costs. Frankly, they wanted to get out of data centers, and they wanted to change costs from CapEx to OpEx and to migrate as much as they could into the Google Cloud and as quickly as possible. And the problem they had was they could not find the services in the Google Cloud to be able to migrate as fast as they are being asked to do. And that's where NetApp came in, providing persistent storage services, data management, so they could do a lift and shift and update in the Google Cloud to achieve their business goals. McKesson, you may also be familiar with, especially if you're a North American customer. McKesson delivers approximately a third of all the medication used in North America each and every day. And for them, the challenge is continually, how do I optimize my operations? Margins are always under pressure, need to become more efficient, and at the same time need to improve the response time to customers. And for that, McKesson decided to use the power of a cloud. And we helped them migrate workloads into the cloud. Now, the last one you may not be as familiar with. This started out as Nextcode, but then Wuxi out of China purchased Nextcode, and they became Wuxi Nextcode. Their charter is to help healthcare providers provide precision medicine to individuals. And the way to do that is genomic analysis. They've been collecting genomic databases from various organizations around the world and public sector organizations as well. And the desire is to let patients walk into a clinic, get a genomic profile in about 40 minutes, and then have a better understanding of proclivities towards illnesses and diseases and precision medicine to treat those that may be arising. Challenge was they were running in a public cloud, and their operations would run for 3.5 days and then time out, and they never completed. They came to us. They're using our storage services and data management. They were able to complete that operation in 45 minutes. So they went from 3.5 days not finishing to 45 minutes. And in addition, they saved approximately 70 to 80% on the cost. And we're fortunate, this is just a small example of the healthcare organizations, be they research hospitals, other hospitals, medical devices, medical distribution, around the world, thousands of clients who depend on NetApp on premises as well as in the public cloud. So let's get started with a story that's probably more what you're facing. Now, Distribution companies and device companies, if you'll forgive me for just a little bit, I'm going to jump into the healthcare provider side, but I think that the analogy or this works with you as well. I rarely find a customer who is able to do greenfield and start new. Most of us have systems that are up and running and they've been running for some time. And to your credit, you've been able to figure out how to make them run and keep them available. In a healthcare provider organization, that might look like a radiology group and a cardiology group and an electric health records group. And then you have back office that might use a NAS protocol or a SAN protocol. And then you have different processes. With all this data, you need to serve up the primary data, you need to provision it, but you also need to back it up and protect it for disaster and archive it. It's a myriad of systems, and that usually means different hardware, different software, different people with their expertise and different processes. And you've been able to make it work, but that adds to cost, it adds to the complexity, and that impacts security and agility, your ability to react to new systems and to provide that digital transformation that your organizations are requesting of you. Now, we NetApp have been in business for close to 3 decades. And we started out with an operating system, a single operating system that we've expanded dramatically over time and have added to. What it allows our customers to do in that on-premises is, instead of having silos of hardware and software, to be able to provide a common data services layer for the clouds on-premises, so that you can mix workloads in a secure manner and still provide the performance and the availability that you need. And by having that common data layer, what that does is it reduces the complexity, which reduces cost and also reduces risk. What we have been doing now for the last 6 years is extending that common data layer into the public cloud. And we're fortunate to have a great working relationship with Google Cloud, where we've been working as an engineering to engineering relationship for 6 years now, building common services to meet your needs. So that allows you to provide a common data layer on premises and in the Google Cloud to use its incredible capabilities. Here's the next dive down. And we understand that you may not be ready to go whole hog into the cloud right away. And you might need to think about, okay, what do I want to do and how do I want to do it? And that's pretty typical. And I usually see a couple different ways of working in the public cloud. One is I want to extend my on-premises environment into the cloud, work in a hybrid cloud or hybrid IT manner. And that may be tiering cold data. That may be using the cloud for backup. That may be using the cloud for DR. That may be doing some systems dev, test, QA in the public cloud. And our customers are telling us that using the ONTAP on premises and its integration into the public cloud, they're able to reduce their data center footprint by up to 90%. And data center may be a bit of a misnomer. That could be a remote hospital or medical center. It could be a branch office. It could be a co-location. But incredible cost savings and facility savings. Now, those 3 I mentioned earlier, Cardinal and McKesson and Wishy Nextcode, they're running production primary workloads in the cloud. And just like with Wishy Nextcode, they're able to get results 3 times faster with our services and at a quarter of the cost. And here's how we do that. We have storage efficiency capabilities in ONTAP that we've been working on for the last 3 decades. That includes things such as deduplication and compression and compaction and the thin provisioning. And these may all sound like storage buzzwords, but what it means to you is, instead of storing, say, 100 terabytes, we squeeze it down so you're only having to store, say, 10 terabytes. Now that depends on your workload. But we bring those capabilities into Google Cloud as well, so that you get a cost reduction in the storing of that data set, be it a primary data set or a secondary data set. Now, in addition, we help in other areas of cloud spend. I talked to a customer just a few weeks ago who was running Oracle in the public cloud. Now, they were running Oracle against the persistent disk right there in the cloud. And it worked more or less, but they had to run an ASM as a volume manager and all these other parts of it, and it was complicated. Instead, they switched over to our Cloud Volume Service, which is a PaaS offering I'll tell you more about in the upcoming slides. And what that meant was they were also able to reduce the virtual machine they needed to obtain the performance. In fact, they were able to go to virtual machines that were 1/3 as expensive. And that meant every minute, every hour, every day, they're saving 66% of the virtual machine cost and license savings as well. So not only do we help with the savings of the persistent storage, but we help the overall savings. Now on that performance, we can scale up to meet high performance workloads such as that genomic analysis that I mentioned in Wuxi Nextcode. But we're also with Google certified for SAP S/4HANA. So you can run HANA and S/4 services in Google against our storage to have a better environment, get your production and your projects done incredibly faster than what you could do in other ways of meeting those needs. Now, if you don't need all that performance, with an API call, you can scale it down and provide a lot less expensive and less performance for those workloads or for those times of days, weeks, months, quarters where that data set doesn't need all that performance. Now, I know that you're also worried about availability and security. You have many systems that can't go offline. And while the clouds don't like to talk about it, things do happen. There can be regional issues, there can be availability zone issues, or maybe just a virtual machine or a disk. And that's where NetApp comes in. We have high availability options so that you can run in a synchronous manner across availability zones in that region. We also have integrated snapshots and replication so that you can go from, let's say, Google Central to Google East 4. And that you can have a disaster recovery environment that spans regions in that cloud, or one of those, or could be on your premises or a colocation center. In fact, we're so confident with the availability of our service, Cloud Volume Service, we offer an SLA. So if for some reason we're not meeting that availability, we will provide you credits and reduce your costs. We're that confident of it. Now, you're storing incredibly important data in many of your workloads. And so you need to not compromise on security. In fact, we have ways of helping make the cloud improve your security and compliance footprint. How we do that is through encrypting the data at rest, encryption of data in flight into and out of the cloud, as well as encrypting the data between the servers or the clients and the volumes or the LUNs. So you can have end-to-end encryption, and you can control those encryption keys and keep them where you would like to keep them, including outside of Google Cloud. Now, on top of that, we have an optional compliance offering that uses artificial intelligence and machine learning to look into the data itself. And I'll tell you more about that in a little bit. But what that means is when you put data into the cloud, we can actually improve your security and your compliance environment. Now on that, we've been working for years on our own certifications as we run SaaS offerings. And that includes, for some of the offerings, ISO certifications, HIPAA certifications, SOC 2 certifications, and FedRAMP certifications. And it varies by particular service, but we can be happy to take you through the details as to which services we've achieved all of those on and where we're still working. But it's not just the cost savings and availability that sets us apart on premises and in the cloud and Google Cloud. With the data management, we can allow you to accelerate project development time or software development time, or reduce the time it takes to get the data provided to new analytics engines for better analysis. And that's through instantaneous point-in-time snapshots and clones. Now, they're not full copies. We just present to the northbound application a new version of that data set or new view, and they believe it's their own. And on the back end, we just keep track of the changed blocks so we reduce cost. But what that means for you is you can take an operation that might take you days to get a new data set delivered to that data scientist or that applications engine or the developer and get that down into minutes. And finally, we understand that you may not be able to go into Google Cloud right away, And so we give you flexibility for using it for backup, for tiering cold data, DR, migrating, caching, etc. So let's take another look at how you may want to use these services combined with Google Cloud. And what I have here is a hybrid cloud solution with a hospital campus running a PAC system in a highly available way, and I'm replicating to another system in that campus or close by. Now, with us, you can get the data on a one-time or ongoing basis across a secure network into the Google Cloud and into our Cloud Volume service. There you can do what I mentioned before, present it into other systems for further analytics. You can copy it into other locations for availability or data protection. You can archive it into Google Cloud Storage for long-term storage to be looked at later, if this were research data or there was a need to get to that data at another time. All of this is connected to our Cloud Volume service for Google Cloud. Now, what is that? Let me give you a little more information. This is a service we developed with Google Engineering. And so you get a native service experience. You would launch it from your Google console. It is a marketplace offering. You get billed directly from Google, so it's part of that overall commercial agreement, commercial term. First level support from Google, but what we provide is the standards file interfaces, NFS and SMB, so you can run Unix, Linux, Windows workloads. Ability to scale the performance up to HANA certification class or scale it down just to home directories if you need. All with an API call and all metered. When you need the performance, you pay for it just when you need it, and when you don't need it, scale it back down. And those snapshots and those clones I mentioned, those are integrated and available for you with just an API call. But there's more. Again, I was talking about NetApp delivering the and. With your data in the cloud, you can look at a service such as Cloud Compliance. Cloud Compliance is that service I mentioned that uses artificial intelligence to detect compliance issues. It looks for things such as patient record numbers and names and ethnic identifiers and taxpayer identifiers and credit cards, and it will highlight where there may be an issue that you want to go look at, or where there's certainly an issue, or where you are fine. So you can have assurance that you're adhering to the regulations you need to. We also have organizations who have file servers out in remote hospitals or branches, and it's a pain to manage, and you have people who need to share the data. Well, that's where file caching comes in. We allow you to store that data in the Google Cloud and to securely cache it out into those locations so those local users get the response time that they need in order to not tear their hair out, but you still get a canonical copy in Google Cloud that you can protect, so you can make sure is compliant and assure is backed up and properly protected against disaster. And you still get file locking so that the different users can work on that same piece of data. That is just a short taste of what we do. We provide persistent storage capabilities. We provide data services. In addition, we allow you to manage the overall cloud environment for service uptime and cost controls with our Cloud Insights offering. And we allow you to optimize your cloud compute costs as well with our Spot instances. Finally, virtual desktop service, you can use Google Cloud as a hosted desktop as a service. I'd love to talk your ears off, but I don't have the time. There's a lot more information on cloud.netapp.com, as well as healthcare specific solutions on the netapp.com main page, and just search for healthcare. So thank you for your time. Hopefully you see with NetApp being the cloud data specialist, we can help you unlock the best of cloud. Thank you, David. Turn it back to you.
All right, great presentation, Spencer. Really appreciate that. We got a lot of good feedback from the audience as well. I've just brought up the poll question for everyone out there. On the screen, it says, what additional information would you like about the NetApp solution? And we'll just leave that up while we do some Q&A. So, Spencer, you ready for some Q&A?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. All right, let's see. First question that came in here, I see they're asking, do you have any healthcare customers where you moved from on-prem to the cloud?
Yeah, and I've mentioned a few of them there. So I'll take an example, go a little deeper into the Cardinal Health one. That's one where it was an on-premises, been working with NetApp and other storage vendors. Business goal is to use the agility and scale of the cloud. We're seeing that during this pandemic as well, the desire to use the quick changes that the cloud provides there. With Cardinal, we brought them with their traditional enterprise applications, helped them to migrate those in a orderly manner into Google Cloud. That's just one example. You saw also McKesson and Wuxi Nexode. And then there's hundreds of others, more regional hospitals, research university hospitals, etc. Common theme is wanting to use the cloud resources in Google Cloud in particular to do more, to be able to use the scaling and use the services in Google Cloud.
Excellent. Very nice. Next question, what about security? Of course, that's always a big concern with healthcare IT. How does security work with this solution? And they say, for example, do you encrypt the data that's sitting in the cloud?
Yeah, it's a very important topic for healthcare, whether you're a provider, distributor, researcher, et cetera. So we think of security in multiple different areas. One is, can the wrong people get access to the data? And there, I would encourage you all to start slow and start small, because it's the governance model and understanding how projects are related and how to best set up your Google Cloud environment. You can do it, but take a look and work on it with a smaller area or smaller application first. And then where NetApp comes in, we look at multiple different areas. So if someone could get in, and we certainly hope they're doing it, what could they get access to? And so there it's about encrypting the data at rest with Cloud Volume Service for Google Cloud. That's always on. And then you can also, with our Cloud Volumes on tap, not only encrypt the data at rest, but have the key outside of the cloud in your control. We also enable encrypting the data in flight, and that's in a couple different areas, into and out of the cloud, as well as once you're in the cloud between the servers or clients and the storage itself. So there's the elements of security. The compliance is different but related, and there we can help customers look into the data itself to better understand, are they adhering to internal and external regulations? That could be HIPAA, where we can offer BAA, but you can also then look using our cloud compliance tool to understand and get reports on how you are adhering or not adhering, where there's a trouble spot. But there's other issues as well, PCI, PII, and various other patchwork of regulations you need to adhere to. So we think of security as in making sure the wrong people don't get access to the data, and we have the encryption in case they do. We are a Google Cloud endpoint, and so we adhere to the Google Cloud IAM and parameters. And then from a compliance related to that, the ability to connect and scan the data to ensure that you are adhering to the regulations.
Very nice. Very nice. And then what about throughput? They're asking here, things like medical records can be very large. Can this really scale up to the throughput that would be required?
Yeah, great questions. Yeah, absolutely. So as I briefly mentioned, the Cloud Volume Service has 3 different performance service levels. And those are just your starting points. It's API controllable. You can open the aperture for performance without moving the data. And we're able to scale up into the hundreds of thousands of IOPS per second and hundreds of megabytes per second. The details are on cloud.netapp.com. So don't just trust what I'm saying. Go take a look, and you'll see exactly what we can do. But you will see also that we are certified with SAP HANA to give you an indication of the types of throughput we can scale to. We have many EDA chip design customers who have very demanding workloads. So absolutely we can scale up when necessary.
Excellent. So we talked about performance, throughput. There's another question here around latency. Do you have any kind of latency metrics for the services?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, go to cloud.netapp.com. You can see, but our latency for the Cloud Volume Service for Google Cloud is under 1 millisecond. Usually it's in the 500-ish microsecond or so, and it will vary region by region slightly. So go take a look at the published performance reports, and then go try it yourself. You can get access to free accounts on Google Cloud and get access to Cloud Volume Service.
So we can go to cloud.netapp.com, try it for ourselves. And what about support around the service? If they have questions, who do they call if they have a question?
So for Cloud Volume Service for Google Cloud, you call Google. It is sold by Google. It is a native look and feel. First level support is by Google. We NetApp are on the back end, providing level 3 sorts of support, working closely with the Google support team. And we did that by design so that it's a simpler operating model for you, the customer, so that you can have a single point for billing, a single point for provisioning, and talking about the security, the overall management of users, and then also if there is an issue, you have a single point for getting support.
Very nice. Sounds easy. A great way to get started. It looks like that's all the questions we have right now, and we've covered everything. So Spencer, I'm going to let you go for now, but it's been really great having you on the event today. Thank you.
Thank you, David, and thank you everyone for listening.
And thank you to NetApp for supporting today's EcoCast. Don't forget to check out the handout that's there in your Handouts tab on laying the foundation for meeting tomorrow's healthcare needs, sponsored by Google Cloud and NetApp. Looks like a very interesting piece of content here. So make sure if you're in healthcare IT, this is a great resource for you to download. And there's even a email address there at the end of it. If you have questions, you can email them directly to learn more. All right. Thank you again to our audience for sticking with us. It's now time for another prize drawing. We have an Amazon $500 gift card, and that's going out to Susanna Tulak from California. Congratulations, Susanna Tulak from California. Still one more gift card to give away, so make sure you stay tuned for that. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our next presenter on today's EcoCast. I'm excited to welcome Leah Gabbert, Senior Solutions Marketing Manager at Nutanix. Leah, take it away.
Thank you, David, and thank you all for joining me today for this webinar. I'm so excited to be here and for our time together today as I walk you through how Nutanix is truly modernizing and securing healthcare IT today. Simplifying and managing your healthcare IT infrastructure is so critical, and securing it is absolutely essential. We get it. At Nutanix, we understand healthcare, and we're deeply embedded in the healthcare IT ecosystem. And perhaps most importantly, we designed all of our solutions with a security-first mindset. It's foundational for everything that we do. But first, a little bit about Nutanix as an organization. We are a relatively young company. We've been around for about 10 years now. We were founded in 2009. We have approximately 5,500 employees worldwide, and we have a global customer base of over 17,000 customers. More than 1,500 of which are healthcare organizations, both in the US and abroad. It's important to note that that number continues to increase for us every quarter, which is super exciting for us because we see it as evidence that the healthcare industry is embracing what Nutanix can provide as you all strive to answer intense technology and infrastructure challenges and pressures daily. Something that we're really proud of is our Net Promoter Score, which you'll see on your screen today. This has remained over 90 for the past 6 years. This is really important to note because the IT industry average is consistently in the low 30s. I wanted to bring attention to this because this Net Promoter Score is a testament to our customer commitment. Nutanix puts our customers first in everything that we do. We embody the idea that your success is our success, and we take pride in delighting our customers. In fact, we strive to make sure that our technologies and our capabilities are designed in partnership with our customers instead of a more traditional vendor type relationship. So what does Nutanix do? Well, quite simply put, Nutanix makes infrastructure invisible. Our solutions allow IT to focus on applications and services that power their business. The Nutanix Enterprise Cloud Platform leverages web-scale engineering and consumer-grade design to natively converge compute, virtualization, and storage into a resilient software design solution with rich machine intelligence. The result is predictable performance, cloud-like infrastructure consumption, robust security, and seamless application mobility for a broad range of enterprise applications. I won't spend time digging into our entire portfolio of solutions that you see here on your screen, but just know that holistically, we allow customers to maintain a singular vehicle to run any application on any platform from any location. Also, our solutions are hardware agnostic, so you can run them on HPE, Dell EMC, or any other hardware platform. Our customers really love having this freedom of choice. This flexibility allows our customers the option to follow a path towards a cloud consumption model, whether that's public, private, or hybrid, if whatever makes sense for them. It provides options to run workloads on that environment that makes the most sense. We're seeing a trend among our healthcare customers specifically that given patient privacy and data security regulatory requirements, it's not possible and doesn't make sense to run all applications on the public cloud. So a hybrid cloud approach seems to be the best option where some mission-critical applications are run on-prem while other workloads are run on the public cloud. So how do we do it? Well, Nutanix is very committed to the pioneering of HCI architecture. HCI, of course, means hyper-converged infrastructure. This is technology that Nutanix pioneered about 10 years ago. Our idea was to remove the complexity from traditional data center architecture. The traditional legacy data center design is really a siloed approach consisting of compute, network, storage, then the ability to run the virtualization or software stack on top of that. The simplification of this architecture is HCI. It collapses the compute, network, and storage onto a single platform and then runs applications on that singular platform. This is how we've been able to redefine and modernize data center design and how we can make that commitment of removing complexity with a focus on simplicity. So think of HCI, our core product, as an appliance where you can run your virtual machines without a SAN. The idea has been wildly successful for us. When I say our platform removes complexity, I mean it. It's so easy. We offer one-click simplicity that allows our customers to deploy and use infrastructure in the same day, and then manage those applications and your infrastructure from a single console. We have testimonials from our customers running application upgrades from their laptop at home while fixing dinner. It really is that easy. Nutanix is the undisputed leader in HCI. In fact, for the third year in a row, Nutanix has been recognized as a leader in the 2019 Gartner Magic Quadrant for Hyper-Converged Infrastructure. And as you can see here, we are top ranked, the leader in the Forrester Wave in both current offering and market presence and product strategy. Shifting gears, what is really shaping the digital transformation of the healthcare industry? We know that traditionally, healthcare as an industry isn't widely recognized as being early adopters in technology, but over the last several years, and quite frankly, the last several months as the result of the recent pandemic, that tide has shifted dramatically. Healthcare organizations are becoming more focused on leveraging technology to allow their staff to work from anywhere, optimize clinical and operational outcomes, to modernize data centers, to enhance security, and more. We've also seen an uptick of focus around consumer and patient engagement trends, clinician and staff satisfaction, personalized treatments, and value-based care. And we are really ingrained into the healthcare IT ecosystem. We partner with leading EHR providers, system integrators, resellers, channel partners, and more, many of which you can see on your screen here. In terms of where Nutanix fits within that healthcare space, if you look at traditional application stacks from access and presentation all the way to data and analytics, our success has really been anchored around the EHR applications like Epic or Meditech, which can run on the Nutanix platform. In fact, it's important to note that we are Epic certified. And with Meditech, Nutanix is the only HCI provider that is certified to support full stack Meditech applications. When we talk about imaging or PACS VNA applications like Fujifilm, Agfa, or Watson Health, among others, those applications are also optimized to run on Nutanix. In addition to the EHR and imaging systems, we understand that you're running a lot of other applications, but Nutanix is really designed to run them all. we know that some healthcare organizations are running hundreds of applications. Nutanix can effectively remove the complexity that IT departments would typically need to deal with as you design your infrastructure to run clinical or IT workloads. We understand that you have to simplify and enable the IT organizations to continue to support your business objectives in a real and meaningful way. Even outside of the clinical workloads and applications, there are a lot of other business critical applications that are certified to run on the Nutanix platform. Whether it's around a branch office or ambulatory site, we hear about the importance of VDI, data and analytics, and we are aware of the increasing trends around machine learning and the use of AI, which have direct correlation to patient engagement and consumerism. These themes are really driving the future of healthcare. As I mentioned earlier, Nutanix takes security seriously. It's never been an afterthought for us. The Nutanix security-first approach means that we keep security in mind, not just as part of the deployment in customer environments, but starting with how we develop our software. By integrating security best practices as part of our standard development process, we can deliver a more secure platform and respond to newly discovered threats quicker. The Nutanix AOS platform is the foundation for protecting your clinical and business applications and patient data. The security features native in the platform provide audit capabilities to help establish a security baseline and to protect your patient data. The Nutanix healthcare and engineer teams work on behalf of healthcare organizations to deliver clinical applications seamlessly from databases to the point of care. We collaborate with all of the vendors, EHR, imaging, reporting, document management, interface engine, security, operating system, and virtualization to continually ensure their products integrate optimally with the Nutanix platform. In addition, Nutanix continually works with business application providers to deliver integrated financial, human resource, big data, voice over IP, remote office, remote user, and security products that run the enterprise. The Nutanix commitment to healthcare is evident. Our commitment is to provide reliable and scalable solutions for all aspects of the business, whether clinical or business or financial, to allow organizations to focus on providing healthcare services rather than managing infrastructure. We have dedicated sales and marketing teams that understand your business. We have dedicated healthcare solution engineering organization to ensure that Nutanix products and solutions are designed to meet healthcare needs and requirements. We provide end-to-end validations of healthcare applications, and we have healthcare-specific support and escalation processes in place to support you. Here's just a quick look at some of the many global healthcare organizations that partner with Nutanix to simplify, manage, and secure their healthcare IT. This number continues to grow each quarter, and we are so excited to work with you. I wanted to share this quick testimonial with you. This comes from Isaiah Nathaniel, CIO at Delaware Valley Community Health. He states, "At the forefront of every CIO's mind is security as it relates to any system in their environment. With Nutanix as a backbone, I am able to stay true to the core essence of both the HITECH Act and HIPAA guidelines simultaneously." I thought that was a powerful statement of success and partnership. When you think about Nutanix and our healthcare journey, really it comes down to having a platform that is simple and completely scalable, that can successfully help customers build out in different phases depending on their familiarity with technology and, of course, the level of investment that they're willing to make. What we've seen most often with our healthcare customers has been a three-step process where they start their engagement with Nutanix around using some of their core applications and running them on hyper-converged infrastructure, and really looking at improving the delivery of those clinical and IT workloads. As they become more familiar with our core infrastructure, the next logical step in the journey is asking the question, which applications make sense to migrate to an enterprise cloud? Whether that's public cloud or private cloud, or like I mentioned earlier, perhaps the most secure option, the hybrid cloud approach. Our customers understand our technology and move to secure critical patient data and automate compliance with regulatory policies. Then finally, having a platform for our customers that can truly enable multi-cloud deployment with any number of different applications that unify operations across different clouds. So why Nutanix? Well, here's why. We bridge the gap between IT extremes. We offer the flexibility and scalability of public cloud without compromising security. We offer the control of on-premises without the CapEx. We offer the agility and security of private cloud without the complexity. We can help you deliver on the promise of hybrid cloud and manage everything together to get the best of all worlds. We let our customers start small and grow big thanks to the seamless scalability of our platform. And finally, because we're focused on you, our customers. I think that's all I have for today. Any questions, David?
Absolutely, yeah. Great presentation, Leah. We do have some questions here for you from the audience. First one that came in, they're saying, this sounds great, but how can I see these tools in action? What options do you have for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So actually, we offer a completely free trial that we call Test Drive. This is a software option that allows you the opportunity to get really hands-on with Nutanix solutions and see how easy they are to implement and manage. So I encourage all of you to navigate to nutanix.com/one-platform. Actually, the hyperlink is on this screen as well. You can see right there. Or it's really easy to just Google Nutanix Test Drive and you'll be able to gain access that way as well. That's a 30-day test drive immersive experience, and people really, really love it because they can see it in action. Great question.
Excellent. Yeah, I love that option, Nutanix Test Drive. A great way to get started. Another question here, they're asking, as it relates to regulatory and compliance requirements, how does Nutanix help healthcare organizations meet those guidelines?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in addition to kind of the overview that I gave earlier in this presentation, it all boils down to the fact that we offer automated healing built within our AOS platform that allows you to meet compliance requirements, including HIPAA, high tech, high trust, and more.
Very nice. And Leah, last question I think we have time for here, and that is, if people want to learn specifically about Nutanix and healthcare, does Nutanix have case studies or what kind of other resources can you provide?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for more information about everything related to healthcare and Nutanix, please feel free to navigate to nutanix.com/healthcare. On this website, there's access to our healthcare customer case studies. There's really in-depth information around HCI as it relates to healthcare, cloud studies as it relates to healthcare, really just even more information about security and how we modernize and secure all of that great IT infrastructure. So I would encourage everyone to go to nutanix.com/healthcare. It's important to note that you can also get to Test Drive from that link as well. So yeah.
Very nice. Nutanix.com/healthcare, and also check out the Nutanix Test Drive. Sounds like some great resources and opportunities there. Leah, thank you so much for being on the event today.
Thank you.
Wolfgang, just a second. Let me introduce you here. I want to just remind everyone, thank you for answering the poll, and don't forget to check out the handout there from Nutanix to the Nutanix One Cloud solution. And again, thank you for all the great questions and feedback coming in from the audience. We've got one more gift card still to announce after our next presenter, and with that, I'm excited to introduce Mr. Wolfgang Gorlick, Advisory CISO at Duo. Wolfgang, thanks for being on the event.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here today. Let me go to my my title slide. This talk is on the where we're going, right? The modernization of healthcare, the improvements in the direction we're taking in security, and doing so, giving this lens with an eye towards where we've been. I think there's a lot of fundamentals that have carried us forward that are worth revisiting. As previously mentioned, I'm with Duo Security, and my role there is as advisory CISO. My background actually is in healthcare. So I started out in healthcare and then transitioned to financial services before coming over to Duo. And day in and day out, I'm very focused in on secure access and zero trust, and I'm very focused in on how can we make security more engaging, because we know that if the folks in our hospitals, if the doctors and staff are not engaged, they're going to work around us, or worse, they're going to work against us. So let's start nearly in the beginning of computing. Let's go all the way back. This is one of my favorite photos of an early mouse. I would love to have one of these. As a matter of fact, I should probably get one made. This particular mouse is an early prototype by Doug Engelbart. So Doug Engelbart, the gentleman behind the mother of all demos, and if you haven't seen it, I would encourage you to look it up. He, back in the 60s, predicted everything from the internet to social media. Fantastic futurist and fantastic technologist. He saw the need for navigating computers, and he worked with a mechanical engineer to build this original mouse prototype. And of course, further refined it into the mouse that we're all familiar with. The cute little mouse on the left. The device on the right, you may be going, wait a minute, I don't know if I've seen one of those. And part of it was Engelbart's conception of the computer was that of an instrument, similar to a musical instrument. And the idea was, much like we learn to play a musical instrument, we will learn to sing the song of our machines. And therefore, he had a reputation for being very exacting, for putting his students through a lot of training, and actually had a 6-month curriculum on how to use the chords on the mouse. Fascinating early start to computing. And of course, that was picked up and inspired the fine folks at Xerox PARC. Here's one of the Xerox PARC's mouse. So you can see we've made a big jump forward from the homemade block of wood to plastic and steel. As a matter of fact, the mouse trackball here is made out of steel. This was a precision instrument, and Xerox PARC viewed mice as precision instruments. They were meant for the engineers. There was a weekly maintenance procedure performed by technicians that would disassemble the mouse and clean it and recalibrate it. These were not inexpensive devices, around $400 or $500 per mouse. And you can begin to see we're starting to get more towards people, but of course it's still, highly expensive, highly maintained piece of equipment meant for experts. And then, of course, that was incredibly disrupted by the Apple mouse. Now, a lot of people think of the Apple mouse, especially people of my generation, very fondly. We went into school one day, and there was a mouse, and we picked it up, and we went to school, and we went to work. A lot of people associate the Apple mouse with Steve Jobs. But what was unique about the Apple mouse is it wasn't Steve Jobs that designed it. Steve actually engaged a guy named David Kelly. David Kelly went through a series of design iterations, looked at how people were going to use this, looked at how it needed to be cleaned, and David Kelly and his design firm would eventually morph into a firm called IDEO. Why I bring up IDEO is the company that revolutionized and proselytized design thinking. In other words, being very human-centric, starting with the person using the device, empathizing with that person, figuring out what they need, how they work, how we can integrate technology in with what they work. At Duo, we follow a design thinking process. IDEO's is up top, Duo's is down below, where we do a discovery and do an exploration. But it's that same thought, that rigorous, almost obsession with the human element. I've got a poster from IDEO hanging in my office that reminds me of this. And it was really put in stark contrast when I was looking at an ITIL roadmap for developing a security capability recently. So I'm looking at this ITIL roadmap, and it says, we need to look at our SLAs, we need to look at our capacity, we need to look at our continuity. And nowhere in there Does it say anything about looking at our doctors, right? Hanging out with our nurses and figuring out how they work, speaking to our billing staff? Nowhere in there is that. It's all about the bits and the bytes. And I think that is why so oftentimes we run into trouble with technology. Back to the mouse, the Apple mouse came out, and it didn't take months to learn. It took minutes to learn. Any school child could pick it up and go. It didn't cost hundreds of dollars. It cost around $25. And what's interesting is even with inflation, even over time, the Apple mouse is still around $25 in 1970s money, which is about $75 today. And you can see that great decrease in time, that great decrease in cost and the complexity that comes out of a design thinking process. Now let's take this to security. Let's take this to zero trust, which is an aspect of security that is emerging, an aspect of security that a lot of us are looking at. And I want to walk through that design thinking process and use that as the backdrop to deploying out zero trust. First of all, of course, we all know how these things work. You got your username, you got your password, you log into Epic, you're good. You should be good. Until people steal your passwords, until you put Epic or Cerner or your platform on the internet to support remote workforce, until you expose it in such a way that people are attacking it with stolen credentials, attacking it with password stuffing. And almost all of our passwords have been stolen at this point. I was talking to a good friend of mine who does threat intel, and it was really disturbing, but also rather interesting. He was talking about Troy Hunt and Have I Been Pwned, right? That website where you can look up your email address. And he said what's interesting is their team uses that website to determine if a email address is likely to be legitimate. Because if it's legitimate, the password's been stolen. It's out there. If it's not on that website, it's probably not a legitimate one. So the first step, of course, is moving into multi-factor to address a lot of these issues. And at that point, we begin to get better control. It's the first foray for zero trust. We have an additional way of ensuring we trust the person. We also have the absolute need to make sure it's simple and quick because we cannot get in the way of patient healthcare and patient safety. And of course, a well-designed MFA solution is going to use a multitude of different factors. Take into account things such as we can't use fingerprint readers because they could be spreading infection. We can't use facial recognition if you're wearing a mask. Taking into account these different factors to put in a good solution. Now that's just on one app. If you look at it across all the different apps that an organization has, we start to run into additional complexity because a typical organization today can be running up to 1,400 apps. So there's a lot of SaaS apps that we need to be concerned about. There's a lot of different points. And why that's important is we've gotten, as an industry, pretty good at guarding Epic and Cerner. We've gotten, as an industry, pretty good at guarding that crown jewel. But all those edge cases is now where the criminals are going. And if they're not protected comparably, that's where password and credential stuffing attacks are still going to work. So we now need to extend, as the second step of zero trust, that strong authentication over those apps. And what that allows us to do is begin to look at devices. We've got strong user identity. The second part of zero trust is strong device identity. And when you have strong device identity, that is an additional leap the criminals need to take to get in, because now they not only have to compromise your username, your password, your factor, your device. It's also an opportunity, back to being human-centric, for us to put in place good use cases, to put in place more human-centric security, to recognize that a lot of people are not working off their corporate devices, and to put in place ways to still evaluate trust and wrap controls around personal devices and BYOD scenarios. Now that's just looking at hygiene, right? Do I trust you because I've seen you on the device? It's actually a really strong signal of trust. Do I trust you because I've seen that you're on the device and it's up to date? That's even stronger. We can take that one additional level. Do I trust you because you're on a device I've seen and it's up to date, and it's free from any malware, free from any signs of infection. And these are the types of trust indicators we want to inject into authentication. So when someone's logging into our apps, someone's logging into our systems, we're checking all these things before they get to any patient health data, before they get to our applications and our resources. Now, when things don't pass, right, your device is not up to date, you're on a jailbroken device. When we've got these scenarios that we are concerned about, we're very concerned from a threat scenario perspective of an infected device accessing patient healthcare and doing command and control back, and that being a bridge into our systems. We can wrap policies around that and do remediation. And that remediation side, again, is back to being human-centric. How can we engage our very intelligent, very hardworking, studious workforce with good messages that make sense? We can help them help us by updating things. I actually use this feature the most because I always forget to update Chrome, and I always forget to update my phone until I get a prompt that, oh, by the way, you need to do something. And of course, the prompts are very well written and easy to understand, so people can walk through that process. That easy to understand, that human-centric focus, I think, is why so many folks enjoy working with a zero-trust solution like Duos. It's why so many folks would engage in a zero-trust solution. And if it's not that, right, if we don't have a clear path to resolution, if we don't have the ability to check devices without installing agents, if we don't have the ability to very cleanly, smoothly attest to strong user identity, if we don't have those things, that's where we're going to get pushback. That's where we're going to get constrained users, and constrained users are creative users, and creative users are the ones that work around us or, work against us to have security programs rolled back. And I think we've all been there where we've put in place good security, and then the one person complains, right? The one person that you were hoping would buy in raises a stink because it gets in their way, and now you've got a political situation that you've got to address on top of a technical situation. So I think that's the benefit of looking at some of the lessons from early technology like the mouse, looking at some of the lessons from design thinking, and thinking about how that carries forward into the future. So the next part I want to talk about, when we talk about past as prologue, is some of our core security principles, how they play out in the zero trust world, how they play out in medical modernization, also where they're likely to go in the future. One aspect of this is ensuring that we've got a good perimeter. Historically, the perimeter was our network perimeter. We put it all behind our network firewalls, we put it all behind a couple of segmented switches, and we're in a good spot. Obviously today, that's not the case in heterogeneous environments where we're maintaining legacy tech as well as plugging into the latest in API-first SaaS platforms. And the gaps in those are oftentimes where we see people circumventing strong authentication, right? We got it on our SaaS apps, we got it on our EMR, but we didn't have it on our API, and that's where they did a credential stuffing attack, and we're able to get into our environment. You see at least one of those types of attacks a quarter being publicized. So it's important that we wrap these controls around these various services we're handling. And it's also important, I think, that we reconsider what a perimeter is. A security perimeter is something that's evaluating policy and making an access control decision. And if we say our perimeter is anywhere we make an access control decision, then we can look at a perimeter as one level up, not the network level, but the application level, and specifically the authentication of the applications. A perimeter is anywhere we make an access control decision. Those access control decisions are on the authentication layer, and that allows or denies access into our resources. We can do that with strong authentication. I think we've all know the benefits of multi-factor. I touched on them a few minutes ago. I'm sure we're all aware of them. What I think is intriguing, though, is the future of strong authentication. in part, the advancements in the different factors, specifically proximity, biometrics, right? Stronger factors for authentication. And also in part, in that multi-factor was intended to cover a weakness of a single factor, a single weak factor being the password. As we look towards where we're headed, I think the idea of a single weak factor plus a strong factor will be going away, right? We'll be moving towards a passwordless state where we're using these other factors, these strong factors, specifically things out of FIDO like UTF and FIDO2, the WebAuthn and CTAP standards. We'll be looking at these to let us go away from that weak password that we're all so tired of entering in. The next thing is asset inventory. Every single standard, right? From NIST to ISO to if you're doing a HIPAA risk assessment or if you're lining up with the CI's critical security controls, right off the bat they ask you, do you have a good asset inventory? It can be very difficult to build a good asset inventory using spreadsheets, using network scanners, using vulnerability scanners. It can be very difficult trying to find all the devices that people are using. And as a matter of fact, that's why whenever organizations are moving to a zero trust for their workforce approach, they almost invariably find a ton of devices they weren't expecting, right? We expected that 10,000 employees would equal 20,000 devices, and instead we found 30,000, 40,000. This example is Centura Health. They actually found 30,000 unidentified devices by monitoring what was authenticating to their applications and then applied policy to those. Now, when we think about zero trust, behind the covers, what we're really talking about is risk-based authentication. Do I trust this person to connect up and log in? Behind the scenes, that means we still need good authorization. We still need good role-based access controls. We still need good RBAC for least privilege. We still need good RBAC for segregation of duties. We still need good RBAC for preventing toxic combinations. And I think the RBAC itself is seeing some innovations with new tools that can do modeling, that can do real-time analysis of roles, and can take away a lot of that effort to figure out who needs what, when, and where. And also adding an attribute-based authentication. So not only are we saying these clinicians can see medical records, but we can say these clinicians can see their medical records for their patients and no one else's. As part of that, of course, that's part of IAM, and another aspect of identity access management is governance administration, where you're seeing the full workflow. How quickly can we get people access? How can we handle access as they change positions? How quickly can we remove access when they retire or transfer to a different healthcare provider? What's intriguing about this, in addition to the automation and taking that down from weeks to days to hours to minutes, is the integration of this with zero trust. So if we don't trust them because of their behavior or other indicators, we can also remove them from groups and remove their access. And finally, economy and mechanism. All these things we're talking about need to be implemented in the most simple, straightforward fashion possible. If you think back to like the original futurists, the original visions of the future, when people were still experimenting with 6-month courses on mice, that was what, the Jetsons, right? You remember the Jetsons? And we all wanted that robot that could push around the vacuum, that robot named Rosie, who could take care of our kids and walk the dog. But we spent too much time thinking about Rosie and not enough time about Roombas, right? Why do you need a vacuum or a robot who can push around a vacuum when you have a robotic vacuum? It's easier, it's simpler, it's fewer pieces, it's fewer components. It's greater economy of mechanism. And as we move forward, I think we're seeing study after study. This particular data point is from a study Cisco performed at the beginning of the year that shows that more vendors, more tools, what we would think would make us more secure, actually cause us to have greater downtime, greater levels of complexity. So with that in mind, as we think about some of these core principles as they apply to zero trust, and as these core principles are going to evolve with greater integration of tools, greater automation for identity and access management, smarter role-based engineering, greater asset inventory, and effectively, eventually, the passwordless future, we can start thinking about how we're going to position our modernization efforts and how we can take advantage of some of these trends. I've been talking about zero trust. Specifically, I've been talking about zero trust for the workforce, which is specific to people. There's also zero trust if you're building applications. There's zero trust in the workplace for the medical equipment we maintain. And much like zero trust for the workforce is effectively controlled when people are authenticating with strong authentication and multi-factor. In the workplace, we're talking about zero trust being when devices are authenticating with strong authentication into NAC. Both technologies that have been around in the past, right? But have seen a lot of modernization and a lot of additional telemetry that allows us to make good decisions. So Duo, of course, is well known for zero trust in the workforce. I want to leave you with two thoughts, and I'll open it up for questions. Thought one is, back to the beginning, every time someone picks up a mouse, right? Every time someone has picked up a mouse, since Apple put them in every single home and every single school, every time someone picks up a mouse, right up until the moment I'm giving this presentation, they're making a choice to strengthen or lessen our security posture. That is why it's so critical that we take a human-first, design thinking approach and create very usable, easy to adopt, easy to manage security solutions for our workforce, for our clinicians, for our people. Second point is this was past this prologue. Regardless of hype or punditry, as we talked about today, good security has always been the mastery of fundamentals. And some of the fundamentals we covered, as you heard throughout this talk, are changing, are evolving, and the evolution of those is going to bring in a lot of other interesting aspects of security that we'll be able to apply to our environments. So I hope that has given some insight into some of the trends that we're seeing and where it's likely to take us. With that, I will open it up to questions.
Excellent presentation, Wolfgang. Really cool stuff. I love the history there about the mouse, and we got a lot of good feedback from the audience as well. Let's take some questions, and while we do that, I'll just bring up this poll that says, what additional information would you like about the Duo security solution? So, Wolfgang, first question I want to ask you here is if you can give some examples of threat scenarios in healthcare for zero trust.
Sure. So one example was that the hospital system we were working with, they wanted to allow clinicians that did not necessarily, or were not employees of that hospital, but were associated with it. They wanted to allow clinicians when they're in the facility or when they're working on patients within the hospital system, the ability to view medical records. And the threat scenario there was they did not want a jailbroken device to be able to view any of those things. They did not want a new and unapproved device to view any of those things. They did not want an unpatched or infected device to view any of those medical records. So those threat scenarios, someone compromising a device, someone compromising a physician's credentials, someone infecting the device and waiting till the clinician logs in and using that path in to gain access. Those are good examples of scenarios that you'd want to codify in a policy.
Got it. Okay. Very nice. Next question. They said you mentioned passwordless. How does passwordless play with zero trust?
Yeah, so at Duo, I actually wrote a white paper on the journey to passwordless. If you're interested in that, you can get that off our website. But effectively, zero trust is defining the perimeters anywhere you make an access control decision, and that is predicated on strong identity. And as I mentioned earlier, historically, strong identity has been a weak factor, a password, with a strong factor, a token, a proximity, a push on your phone. The passwordless direction we're taking is removing that weak factor and using that as an opportunity to provide a better experience to users, much faster, much simpler than have to remember things and type them in and forget them, as well as a stronger level of authentication, because we can move to an even stronger factor like those that are being provided through the FIDO Alliance for providing that strong identity.
Very nice. And so if people are interested in Duo, is there an easy way to try it out if they've never used it before?
Yeah, off of Duo.com, there is the ability to see demos or sign up for a trial, certainly, and get hands-on with the product.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Wolfgang, a really cool presentation. Thank you so much for sharing it today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
For more information on Duo, check out that handout that's available there in the audience console. It's in the Handouts tab. It's entitled The 2019 Duo Trusted Access Report, and it goes in great detail into the enterprise zero trust security model, how it works. Also very visually appealing, I might add. Really cool report. I'm going to have to read this more myself. Hope that you'll download that one and check it out. Thank you for all the great feedback. Matthew, Scott, Neil, so many great comments from our audience. Always really appreciate that. Chris, Alex, Matt Durek, thank you. Dan, thank you so much. Really appreciate all the good feedback. So glad to hear when the audience out there enjoys the event. We do appreciate that and love to hear that. Before we go, I want to announce the winner of our final Amazon $500 gift card. That's going to Tom Roberts from Michigan. Congratulations. Tom Roberts from Michigan will reach out to you to deliver your gift card. Before you go, I want to remind you to subscribe to the 10 on Tech podcast over in the iTunes store. If you are a potential sponsor of an upcoming MegaCast or EcoCast event, reach out to us at connect@actualtechmedia.com. And with that, I want to invite you to our next EcoCast. It's actually happening tomorrow. It is the Modernizing and Securing State, Local, and Educational, or SLED, IT organizations out there. If you're in the public sector, this is going to be a great event for you as well. You'll hear from Unitrends, Nutanix, Mimecast, Rapid7, and Rubrik. I will also have some great prizes to give out. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on today's EcoCast on modernizing and securing healthcare IT. I hope that you learned a lot, and have a great day. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.